Hello, this is Todd Hubbs. Today I'm talking about my weekly outlook from January 21st, 2020. Two trade deals and a price drop. Last week we saw uh, the administration sign the Phase 1 trade deal with China, and the Senate approved the USMCA or NAFTA 2, whatever you want to call it. And despite these positive developments on the trade front, we saw prices in both corn and soybeans deteriorate a bit. So I'm talking about today where I see exports for corn and soybeans going, and how I'm a little bit cautiously optimistic about this Chinese Phase 1 trade deal. So where we currently stand, and these are FSA export sales numbers, 2019-20 total commitments. Now that's everything sold and sent, basically. We're well behind last year's pace for corn exports, about 511 million bushels behind. And when you even take out the lower projection for USDA's WASDE from corn, we're still around 150 to 160 million bushels behind. So that doesn't sound good on the face of it. There's two things that can get corn to the current USDA projection, 1.775 billion bushels, and that's stronger exports in the second half of the marketing year, which I sort of expect, related to maybe the Brazilians won't export as much in 2020 as they did in 2019, and I'll talk about that a little more in the next slide. And the Chinese coming in and buying. Now, it's important to remember the Chinese have a tariff rate quota on corn, and it's global at about 283 million bushels. It's enforced, and it's part of the trade deal, and that's everybody's corn, so that would include Ukraine, anybody else that wanted to sell China corn. So we could see corn exports to China increase. It probably won't be 283 million bushels in 2020, and I'd be surprised if it was that in the 2019-20 marketing year, but we could see that strengthen a bit. But even without the trade deal with China, I think we might see corn exports expand in the second half of the marketing year. We've been at a very low pace. We've been doing around 18 to 20 million bushels a week in export sales. It's picked up slightly over the last month, but it's still way lower than I would like to see. So let's talk about a little bit about Brazilian corn exports, and particularly their second crop corn, or the safrinha crop. What you're seeing here is safrinha crop corn production. This is CONAB numbers. I've sort of mixed CONAB and USDA numbers here. But you definitely notice in this chart a pattern. When the crop's up, Brazil exports more. When the crop's down, they export less. Right now, USDA is projecting 1920 about 1.32 billion bushels of corn exports, which is down substantially from the 1.54 billion bushels they exported last marketing year. You can see the safrinha crops project to be down a little bit. They're just starting to get the crop in the field. It's a little bit later than usual. I think it will be this year, but corn prices are really strong in Brazil right now. There's reports down in the south that they're importing corn from their neighbors. I would love it if they actually imported some U.S. corn at some point this year, because they sold so much in the export market last year. And that's basically what's been eating our market share in corn exports. It started in June of last year and has continued. So I expect we'll see stronger corn exports in the second half of the market year if we have them available, because I don't think Brazil is going to export near as much. And then if China comes in buying, we could hit that 1.775 billion bushels, or maybe exceed it. But I wouldn't hang a lot on, particularly in corn exports in particular, on the Phase 1 trade deal. Now, it could be much stronger than I expect. I know there's a lot of cynicism around this Phase 1 trade deal, and everybody's skeptical about China hitting their targets. But I think we should be cautiously optimistic at this point about the trade deal. So that's corn. When we think about soybean exports, we're about on pace or a little slightly above last year's pace for soybean exports. Now that sounds good until you consider last marketing year we were well down from what we normally export in soybeans. And this year, a lot of the buying, as you can see from total commitments, has been from China. They're about 418 million bushels through January 9th. And what tends to happen is when China buys more, we sell less to the rest of the world, and that's been what's going on this year, particularly in the Western Hemisphere. So South American buyers, Mexico, they're a little bit lower than normal. And the European Union's a little bit lower than normal, but China's higher. So with the phase one trade deal in place, I expect China to buy more soybeans. The question is how much. If they revert to a normal soybean buying pattern in a non-trade year like we saw in 2016-17, 2017-18 a little bit, from January to August, they normally buy around 400 to 420 million bushels of soybeans. That's feasible this year. I think you can see it be a little bit stronger, but there's going to be a large substitution effect because there's what looks like 4.5 billion bushels of soybeans coming out of Brazil, and they're going to sell them. I'd be surprised if China walked away from Brazil buying. So any kind of soybean buying from China this marketing year may be backloaded into the 2020-2021 marketing year. To give you an idea about what this looks like, these are monthly U.S. soybean exports to China and then monthly U.S. soybean exports to the rest of the world on the right-hand side. And I'm showing 2014-15 through 2016-17 marketing year and then what we've done under the trade deal. And as you can see how this substitution takes place. When China's on good trade relations with us, they buy a lot through October through February. Then Brazil comes on and they start buying Brazilian soybeans. Under the trade fight, we saw the rest of the world pick up some of the slack, but they're never able to pick up everything. And so if China starts to buy more with a large Brazilian crop, I would expect the rest of the world to source more Brazilian soybeans if they're available, which I think they will be. So while the USDA is currently projecting 1.775 billion bushels of soybean exports, we could see that number go up. But we may be talking to 30 to 50 million bushel increase in the final number, not hundreds of millions of bushels, despite the trade deal. So I'd like to thank you for your time. You can find my weekly outlook and daily analysis of issues related to Corn Belt farm economics at farm.daily.illinois.edu. I look forward to seeing you around the state of Illinois.